Hi guys, Paul the DIY Guy here, and welcome to That's PS. And today I'm going to be doing my very first question and answer video. So my first question today is from Evil Dan Wallace, and he wants to know, if I could only use one type of glue for the rest of my life, what would it be? That is not really an easy question to answer because there are so many types of glue and each of them does their own thing. I mean, you've got your crazy glues for instant bonding, your white glues for wood and working, and Mod Podge, which is an amazing tool. There's contact cement, which is super useful for a lot of stuff too. But the one that I find is best for a lot of the things that I personally work on is hot glue. So if I had to stick with just one, I would probably use hot. Mr. Grog and Roll asks, what are the 5 most basic tools you need and should master? Now this is not an easy question either because it really depends on what type of crafts you are doing. That being said, for a lot of the stuff that I do, I tend to use a lot of the same skill set over and over again. So I highly recommend you learn how to use scissors. On top of that, I also use an X-Acto knife, which is similar in what you do, but a totally different skill set. I also do spend a lot of time on my sewing machine, so I need to be good at that. And as the X-Acto knife is to the scissors, learning to hand stitch is super useful too. Once you know how to do that, you can pretty much sew anything, do cross stitching, plastic canvas. Hand sewing is a very useful skill as well. And lastly, this isn't really a skill, but it's something that if you're gonna be a crafter, you absolutely have to have, and that is patience. Take your time, don't rush, you will get there eventually. Cordelia Earl asked me, when, how, why did you start DIY? I have been crafting for literally as long as I can remember. I have a vague memory of one of my after-school programs when I was in a really early grade where we would spend a lot of time working on different types of crafts. Simple things like gift bracelets. As a matter of fact, this is the only thing that I even kind of remember, and I can't even remember if that's really a true memory or if just something I've made up. But after that, I've always been involved with arts and craft projects. When I went to camp, I used to make a lot of crafts. I remember making a checkerboard one year, a marionette another, and in high school, I even made my own chessboard. They're kind of tough to see, but they are right up there. This is something I've been involved with pretty much all my life, and it's just something that I really enjoy because I love creating stuff. Captain Spears asks, what's a place for free or cheap nerdy cross-stitch patterns? I'd have to say Etsy is the place to go. I actually design my own cross-stitch patterns now, and I have a couple for sale on my Etsy store. Check in the doobly-doo for the link. But the whole site is filled with awesome things, so not necessarily free, but certainly cheap. And of course, if you're looking for free, try your hand at designing your own. Never know if you're any good at it until you try it. KDTT asks, what was your first nerdy fandom? That's really tough to say because I've been into a lot of things for a lot of time, but I think my very first big fandom was Nintendo. I remember opening it up, and I believe it was my 10th Christmas, and I opened it up, I set it up, I started playing, and I basically haven't stopped playing Nintendo in one form or another since then. And the only magazine subscription that I wanted as a kid was to Nintendo Power because it had all the cool stuff, and we didn't have the internet yet. She also wants to know what my biggest crafting disaster was. I've been pretty fortunate that I haven't had too many major failures. My first attempt at a bomb was pretty derpy looking, but I think the only craft that I would consider a complete and total disaster was trying to make the hidden blade from Assassin's Creed. I got all the pieces together that I could find, but it just never happened. I could not figure out how to put the thing together. It just didn't work. The Mighty Jared wants to know, what historical event's outcome could have been drastically altered by the presence of the almighty duct tape? This one is really tough for me to answer because I'm not exactly what you would call a history buff, but I'd like to think that there's a fairly famous cruise liner that could have just been patched up with the stuff if they had known about it. Mr. Rock and Roll wants to know how to find ideas and get over the paralyzing fear / perfectionism of doing it wrong. Okay, so this is really 2 questions, so I'll address the first one. When it comes to finding ideas, I look to other people. I often get inspired by things that I see other people working on, and that's one of the main reasons I run nerdcrafting.com. That link will be in the doobly-doo. That's because I love going around seeing what other people are working on and wanted to give them a place to showcase. Maybe those will give you some ideas. I also heavily rely on your guys' suggestions. Even if I don't use the exact ones that are suggested, they often help inspire me to create other things. As for the paralyzing fear and or perfectionism of doing it wrong, this is worth a whole other talk. The person that I look to for inspiration on answering this is Ira Glass. You have to know that when you're starting out, things are not going to be like you want. It's just gonna happen. It's natural. It's part of being a beginner. The way to get over that is to keep doing it and improving and doing it again and improving and doing it again. And that is the only way that you're going to take what you have in your head and turn it into something that's a real product that matches what's in your head. There's a whole other video in there, and maybe I'll do one of those later. Cordelia Earl again asks, if I could only do one DIY skill for the rest of the time, what would it be? It would probably be cross-stitching. It's one of the ones that I always fall back to, and I just love doing it. It lets me do something with my hands, and I get to create little pieces of art. She also wants to know if I'll ever come to the UK. Let me see, Doctor Who, Sherlock, Catherine Tate. Yeah, I think someday I'd like to come check out the UK. Blair wants to know, when I play board games, what color dasher do I use? I don't really know what you mean by dasher, but I assume it's the type of characters that use it. My first choice of color in any game is usually black. I just think it's cool. But since I know that it's a popular color, I'll use whatever. I'm there for the game, not necessarily for the colors. And my final question today comes from Sharon McDermott, who is currently working on my TARDIS sewing box and wants to know if I'm going to be making any new patterns in the future. Absolutely, I'm going to be working on new patterns. As a matter of fact, I put a bunch of them up on my Etsy store already. And if you haven't checked that out already, I will put a link in the doobly-doo so you can do so. And as I design more, I will be putting more up there. And that is all the questions I have for today. Thank you so much for asking them. If you have a question that you'd like to ask me that I haven't answered already, and maybe I'll answer it when I do my next Q&A. And as always, if you like this video, make sure to hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed already, click the button down below to do so. Thank you so much for watching, and until I see you next, stay crafty, my friends.